Growing up, I always envisioned having a twin brother as a gift, a built-in best friend, someone who'd understand me like no one else could. Instead, Matt became the sun, and I was perpetually stuck in his shadow. It was clear from the start who my parents considered the chosen one. Matt was everything they'd ever dreamed of in a child, academically inclined, already planning his future with meticulous detail, practically a carbon copy of their own ambitions. I, on the other hand, was the outlier, the twin who preferred the feel of bark under her bare feet to the rustle of pages, who'd rather score a goal than plunk out a piano sonata. Their expectations for us were drastically different, a truth they never bothered to conceal. Matt received praise for every A, while I was reprimanded for every B. They envisioned scholarships, Ivy League schools, and a high-powered career for him. For me, it was all cautionary tales and anxieties, as if my passion for sports was a flaw that needed correction. This imbalance wasn't limited to academics or future prospects. It permeated every facet of our lives, even birthday celebrations. Matt's birthdays were extravagant affairs. Our parents threw lavish parties, inviting all his classmates, transforming our backyard into a carnival of balloons, games, and noise. There was always a magician, his favorite foods, and a cake so tall it seemed to scrape the ceiling. My birthdays, in stark contrast, were an afterthought, a quiet acknowledgement. Where Matt had a symphony, I was given a solo. No childhood friends running around my living room, no festive decorations in my favorite colors, only a small dinner with family and a store-bought cake that seemed to have been chosen in haste. I remember feeling a dull ache of resignation and envy as I watched him beaming, surrounded by friends and presents, knowing my own celebration would pale in comparison. The only person who truly saw me, truly got me, was my grandmother. She possessed a rare ability to make me feel special in a way my parents simply couldn't. Her visits always brought a warmth that filled the house, a comforting contrast to the usual chill. She'd always manage to sneak me a box of my favorite chocolate truffles, hiding them in her suitcase until she could give them to me privately, away from the oblivious eyes of my parents. "Keep your chin up, darling," she'd whisper, pressing a few dollars into my hand. "Buy yourself something nice, something just for you." As I got older, the favoritism escalated, evolving into what felt like a cruel form of neglect. My parents attended every single one of Matt's soccer games, their cheers echoing across the field, while they rarely bothered to show up to my track meets. And even when they did, they'd spend the majority of their time absorbed in their phones or discussing Matt's latest accomplishments with the other parents. The emotional weight was crushing. I began to internalize their disapproval, feeling as though I was somehow less valuable, less deserving of attention and affection than Matt. The laughter drifted from Matt's room most nights, a muffled soundtrack to his video game victories or whatever movie marathon was happening. My own room felt like a vacuum, isolated and silent. High school felt less like a launching pad and more like a battlefield, one I was ill-equipped to navigate. The academic pressure was only part of it. The real war was with my own family, specifically the preferential treatment Matt seemed to effortlessly command. As we progressed through high school, the difference in how my parents treated us became more pronounced, more of a constant presence. Matt was their golden child, his every academic success magnified under a spotlight. My accomplishments, if even acknowledged, received a perfunctory nod, a quick, dismissive smile. The tension between Matt and me thickened, straining the supposed bond between twins. It wasn't just the lack of parental attention that bothered me, it was their outright dismissal of my interests. I'd always been drawn to sports, to the physicality of running and the camaraderie of a team. It was my outlet, my escape. But my parents saw it as a distraction, a frivolous waste of time that could be better spent studying. They believed time on the track was time stolen from textbooks. One afternoon, that belief solidified into a concrete barrier. I remember practically bouncing into the kitchen, brimming with excitement. I'd made the varsity soccer team. Surely, I thought, This would earn me a fraction of the praise so freely given to Matt. But the reaction was instantly deflating. "We'd prefer you focused on your studies, like Matt," my dad said, barely glancing up from his newspaper. "Sports aren't going to get you into a good college." The constant comparison, the feeling of always falling short, was infuriating. I argued, I pleaded, trying to explain how important soccer was to me, that it was more than just a pastime, it was something that genuinely made me happy. Their response was firm. "No extracurricular activities until your grades improve to our standards," my mom declared, ending the conversation. I retreated to my room, a knot of anger tightening in my stomach. The lack of control over my own life felt suffocating. It was like my own desires, my passions, were irrelevant, secondary to some predetermined image of who I should be, an image carefully constructed by my parents without any consideration for my own voice. The pressure intensified with what they considered the final straw. It was something so trivial, so commonplace. I had downloaded Snapchat to stay connected with my friends, something all my classmates were doing. But when they discovered it on my phone during one of their regular inspections, they reacted with disproportionate fury. The shouting started, accusations of being secretive and untrustworthy flew. Their overreaction felt completely unjustified. "You're just like your friends, wasting your life away with these distractions." My mother's voice, sharp and filled with disapproval, echoed in the sudden silence after my phone slammed against the wall. The sickening crack of the screen felt like a physical representation of the growing distance between us. It wasn't just the phone, it was everything. The next day, the hollow space where my bedroom door used to be felt like a gaping wound. "No privacy for someone who can't be trusted," my dad had stated flatly, the final screw turning with a finality that chilled me. I felt exposed, vulnerable, as if my innermost thoughts were suddenly on display. It wasn't just about the lack of a door, it was the blatant disregard for my personal boundaries, the constant reminder that I was living under their control, subject to their rules, their judgment. But the real gut punch came from Matt. He saw my predicament as a golden opportunity to climb even higher in my parents' esteem. Instead of showing an ounce of support, he became their star witness, adding fuel to the fire with his subtle digs and insinuations. "She's always hiding things," he'd say, his tone implying I was some kind of master manipulator, always scheming behind their backs. It felt like he was deliberately trying to paint me as the black sheep of the family. His betrayal didn't stop within the four walls of our home. He took his twisted version of reality to school, seeding rumors and lies about my supposed misbehavior. He whispered to anyone who'd listen that I was a wild child, always partying, that I was destined to fail. And people listened. I could feel the subtle shift in the hallways, the way my classmates looked at me. Friends who used to greet me with enthusiasm now offered only hesitant nods or avoided my gaze altogether. It was as if Matt's distorted image of me, a caricature of someone I wasn't, was slowly replacing the real me in their eyes. The breaking point arrived during yet another agonizing argument at home, this time centered around my perceived lack of ambition. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" The question, a constant refrain, sliced deeper than ever before. Something inside me snapped. I yelled back, a rare and terrifying act of defiance, because I'm not Matt. And I don't want to be. The house fell silent, the suddenness of my outburst shocking even me. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a flicker of surprise in their eyes, a hint that maybe, just maybe, they would finally hear me. But the moment vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by a wave of anger that washed over their faces. That night, staring at the ceiling in the doorless room, I finally understood. The chasm between us was too wide, too deep. My own family saw me as an alien, an anomaly in their carefully constructed world. The emotional weight was crushing, and I started retreating inward, constructing walls around my heart to protect myself from further pain. School became a place of forced endurance, not the joy it should have been, and home offered no refuge, no comfort, just a constant barrage of judgment and disappointment. The pressure to excel, to be a carbon copy of my brother, was relentless, suffocating me during my sophomore year. Matt's constant undermining, the way he chipped away at my reputation both at home and at school, left me feeling utterly trapped. I was perpetually on edge, like walking a tightrope high above the ground without a net. It was during this period that something seemingly insignificant happened, an event that ultimately widened the already gaping divide in our family. It really should have been nothing. But in our intensely strained home environment, it was like striking a match in a room filled with explosive fumes. That term, I'd actually managed to do well in a couple of subjects, earning grades that were almost as good as Matt's. I remember that brief flicker of pride, a rare feeling considering the constant criticism I usually faced. I was so eager to share something positive with Mom and Dad. I remember going to them that evening, report card in hand, secretly hoping that this time, maybe they would see me as something other than just the other twin. Their reaction was disappointing. They acknowledged my grades with a cursory nod, but the conversation immediately shifted back to Matt and his acceptance into some fancy summer program. That was the topic of conversation at dinner for weeks. My achievement was essentially dismissed, that potential moment of connection dissolving before it ever really formed. This consistent pattern of neglect had a deep and lasting effect on me. It deepened the sense of isolation I felt within my own home. My relationship with my parents became less about emotions and more about transactions. Conversations were brief, focused solely on necessities, never a genuine exchange of thoughts or feelings. I felt like a guest in my own house, always walking on eggshells, constantly anticipating a reprimand or dismissal. As the school year dragged on, Matt's behavior escalated. The passive-aggressive comments became outright confrontations. He seemed to get some kind of sick satisfaction from my discomfort. He would deliberately start arguments in front of Mom and Dad, knowing full well that they would always take his side. One such argument started over something ridiculous, the TV remote. Matt wanted to watch some documentary for a school project, and I was halfway through a movie I had been looking forward to watching all week. When I refused to give him the remote, he turned to our parents, immediately playing the victim. He claimed I was always hostile towards him and that I never supported his academic pursuits. The argument spiraled out of control quickly. Voices were raised, and harsh words were exchanged. In the heat of the moment, Matt accused me of jeopardizing his chances of success, calling me petty and selfish. The accusation was absurd, but Mom and Dad bought into his story completely. They chastised me for being inconsiderate and told me to apologize. Humiliated and utterly frustrated, I stormed out of the room, the injustice of it all burning in my chest. It was painfully clear that no matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried, I would always be in the wrong in their eyes. This constant siding with Matt only emboldened him, and he started to create more elaborate lies about my behavior at school. He told his friends, anyone who would listen, that I was a troublemaker at home, ungrateful and rebellious. He painted me as the villain in our family drama, a narrative that began to bleed into my social life, affecting my relationships with my classmates and friends. The true breaking point, the event that not only shattered my relationship with my family but also marked the beginning of my journey toward independence, happened on a day that started out just like any other. I was absent-mindedly making a sandwich in the kitchen when Matt stomped in, radiating hostility. His eyes fixed on me with a pointed, accusatory glare. Out of nowhere, he launched into an attack, berating me for using the last slices of bread, well aware that Mom and Dad were within earshot. As his voice rose and the argument escalated, Matt did something completely unexpected. Fueled by anger, he shoved me hard. The force sent me stumbling backward, slamming into the edge of the counter. A sharp jolt of pain shot through my side, and the shock of his physical aggression left me momentarily speechless. It felt like a definitive turning point, a new low in whatever twisted dynamic we had. When our parents rushed in, Matt immediately switched gears, playing the victim. He insisted that I had provoked him, that he had only been defending himself. I tried to explain what really happened, to tell them that he had pushed me first, but my words seemed to bounce off them. Their expressions were fixed, a mask of disappointment seemingly directed solely at me. The unfairness of it all was overwhelming. Not only had I been physically hurt by my own brother, but I was now being blamed for the whole thing. It highlighted, yet again, how conditional my place in the family felt, how much it seemed to depend on my obedience and silence. And, even then, fair treatment wasn't a guarantee. Later that night, lying in my room with the door still hanging askew, the full weight of my situation finally settled in. I felt utterly alone, existing in a family that didn't truly see me, in a home where I didn't feel safe to express myself or even defend myself. The emotional and, now physical, barriers that had been slowly building over the years had finally solidified into an insurmountable wall. I think part of his anger stemmed from jealousy. It reached a boiling point around our 14th birthday. No one showed up for his party, which was horrible. I still don't know why his friends did that to him. But in stark contrast, my friends took me out for ice cream, and I had a genuinely wonderful day. This seemed to infuriate him further. To get back at me, Matt started spreading these awful rumors at school, painting me as some spoiled brat. He even went as far as to falsely claim that I was physically abusive towards him at home, knowing that our parents favored him. Unbeknownst to me for a while, he started taking things to this disturbing level, fabricating evidence. He would actually punch himself, deliberately inflicting injuries like a black eye or a bruised shoulder. The next day, he would confidently walk into school, proudly displaying these self-inflicted injuries as proof of my supposed violence, and make up elaborate stories whenever our parents questioned him about the injuries. He'd lie, claiming it was due to innocent accidents, like playing football with his friends and getting accidentally hit. The lies, coupled with the alleged black eyes, started to gain traction. People began to believe his twisted version of events. Before long, whispers started circulating, and even some of my friends began to look at me with suspicion. It started subtly at first, with just little things I noticed. The hallways, once buzzing with friendly chatter, suddenly felt vast and empty. Friends who used to stop and talk now hurried past, avoiding my gaze. Invitations to hang out dwindled, then stopped altogether. It was as if I'd become contagious, and everyone was afraid of catching me. One day, I finally worked up the nerve to ask Sarah, who used to be my best friend, what had changed. She hesitated, then told me my twin brother, Mark, had been spreading rumors about me. She repeated some of the things he'd said, elaborate lies about me doing things I could never imagine. It felt like a punch to the gut. Disbelief warred with a deep, aching betrayal. My own brother, the person I'd shared a lifetime with, was deliberately trying to destroy me. The next day, after school, I confronted Mark. He just smirked and walked away, pretending I didn't exist. I begged him to stop, to tell people the truth, but he just laughed and said I deserved everything that was happening to me. His coldness scared me. His lies were so elaborate and unwavering. I desperately wanted to tell my parents, but fear held me back. What if they believed him? What if they saw me the way he was painting me? The isolation was crushing. I'd always been friendly, open to people. It felt like Mark was systematically dismantling every connection I'd made. Even teachers started acting differently, their smiles strained, their questions clipped. It was like living in an alternate reality, a distorted reflection of my life where I was a completely different person, the monster Mark had created. The rumors weren't just playground gossip anymore. They were shaping people's perceptions of me. It wasn't long before the principal heard about it. Then, the nightmare became real. I was called into his office, along with Mark and our parents. The air was thick with tension. The principal, his face grim, demanded the truth. I prayed Mark would finally admit he'd lied, but he doubled down. He told the principal that the rumors were true, that I was a bully who constantly beat him when our parents weren't around. My jaw dropped. I couldn't believe the audacity. He spun this elaborate tale about how I was jealous of him because he got more attention from our parents. Every word was a lie, but he clung to it with a disturbing intensity. My mom started crying, hugging Mark protectively, as if he were the victim. My dad, patting Mark on the back, told him he was brave for speaking up and that he'd make sure nothing like that ever happened again. After that day, I pleaded with the principal, trying desperately to convince him it was all made up. The accusations felt like a crushing weight, pulling me under. I struggled to breathe, to reach the surface, but my brother just kept repeating his story, that I was this angry, volatile person, constantly lashing out at him. Mom's silent tears, her protective arm around him, her sidelong, judging glances, it felt like I was arguing against a brick wall. The principal's office was stark and cold as he gave me a harsh reprimand, his words like a slap. He said bullying was unacceptable, and this imaginary situation warranted a suspension. I remember pleading with him, begging him to understand, to believe me. I couldn't be suspended. But he shook his head, a look of stern disappointment in his eyes. He couldn't just ignore it, he insisted. Tears streamed down my face as I tried to explain that I hadn't done anything. He wouldn't listen. He delivered the verdict, a 10-day suspension, a public example. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I dissolved into fresh sobs, pleading, begging him to reconsider. My parents, faces red with anger and embarrassment, pulled me out of the office. I fought them, digging in my heels. I wanted to explain, to make them see. But they wouldn't listen either. We left the school building. Each step I took felt heavier than the last. The world tilted on its axis when we got home. Without a word, Dad started hauling my things out of my room. I stood there, frozen, completely blindsided. Mom asked him what he was doing, a note of fear in her voice, but he just roared that he wouldn't have me under the same roof as my brother anymore. I fell to my knees, begging my brother to tell the truth, to say something, but he just stared blankly ahead, his face a mask. Dad shoved a suitcase full of my clothes into the foyer. I grabbed onto his legs, clinging, pleading him not to do this. It was a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. He said I didn't deserve to live in his house. A bully like me. He would call his mother, my grandmother, and she could come and get me if she wanted to. The floor seemed to drop away beneath me. I stood there, numb, surrounded by my belongings scattered haphazardly in the entryway. Kicked out. My own home. Eventually, Grandma arrived. Her presence was like a ray of light in the darkness. She gathered my scattered belongings, packed them carefully into the car, and gently guided me into the passenger seat. She made sure my seatbelt was fastened before marching up to our front door. She rang the doorbell, and when Dad opened it, she unleashed a torrent of fury. She warned him, her voice shaking with anger, that if he ever came near me or tried to contact me again, she would go straight to the police or to CPS. What he'd done was abuse, plain and simple, and it could land him in jail. My mother, attempting to deflect the situation, muttered something about it being my fault. Grandma wouldn't let her finish. She wasn't going to stand for it. She stood tall, defending me with a conviction I'd never witnessed before. It wasn't just a defense, it was a declaration that I, a child, didn't deserve such cruel treatment. In that moment, I understood the strength my grandmother possessed. She refused to be intimidated by my parents, and unlike them, she believed in me. Finally, we drove away, leaving behind the only home I had ever known. The pain then is hard to articulate even now. I remember collapsing on the bed in my new room, unable to eat, no matter how gently my grandmother coaxed. When I eventually told her about my brother's actions, she was as stunned as I had been when it all happened. Her assurance that she believed my version of events was a lifeline, a desperate comfort that at least one person was on my side. The thought of returning to school after those 10 days of suspension felt like walking into a trap. As I walked through those familiar hallways, I could feel the stares, the judgment radiating off my classmates like heat. The weight of those false accusations hadn't lessened. It clung to me, suffocating. Meanwhile, my brother acted like I was invisible, as if I didn't exist. He had found friends who believed his narrative, who saw him as the injured party in my supposed attacks. No matter how many times I tried to explain my side, my words hit a wall. I was ostracized, branded with a label that refused to come off. In the classroom, the cafeteria, the corridors, everywhere I went, I saw disdain and mistrust in people's eyes. I withdrew into myself. I would keep my head down, attend my classes, eat my lunch alone in the cafeteria, and rush straight home afterward. I was friendless, and it felt like everyone wanted me gone. My parents never bothered to call, not once, to see how I was coping. Only my grandmother would constantly remind me that none of this was my fault, that things would eventually get better. I graduated with good grades, clutching to the hope that college would be different, that I could build a better life for myself. It wasn't until I left for college that I truly understood the meaning of freedom. For the first time, there was no one scrutinizing my every move, no one comparing my grades, no one trying to undermine me. I met people, formed friendships with like-minded individuals, despite the emotional and physical scars from my family and peers. I focused on putting the past behind me and embracing the college experience. It was during this time that I rediscovered my passion for writing. I had always secretly wanted to be a writer, but the practicality of it scared me, so I had given up on my dream. But to make a little money, I decided to try my hand at freelancing. I signed up on several freelancing sites, which unexpectedly led to projects for several prominent clients. All through college, I quietly built my portfolio, a secret side hustle that fueled my independence. I never once asked my parents for money. Graduation arrived, and instead of joining the corporate rat race, the path ahead became clear. I could turn content writing into my full-time career. It was more than just a job. It was a realization. The multiple clients I had, the long-term professional relationships I nurtured, all culminated in a steady stream of projects. These established connections were my bedrock, allowing me to be woven into various exciting ventures. This blossoming freelancing career gave me not only financial independence, but also the exhilarating freedom to travel the world as a digital nomad. Exploring new places, new cultures, surprisingly helped me heal from some deep-seated wounds, even though the journey itself wasn't always easy. I scrimped and saved, took a leap of faith, and bet on myself. Over the years, I've seen so much of the world, yet I know there's so much more waiting to be discovered. Throughout it all, my grandmother was my rock, the one person I truly considered family. I adored her beyond words. Moving out broke her heart, I know, but she understood my need for independence, my drive to carve my own path. Despite my increasingly hectic schedule, I always made sure to carve out time for her. Weekends were sacred. We would share meals, simple but precious, or just sit on the porch, lost in conversations that spanned from my childhood mischief to the latest goings-on in my life. I'd dedicate entire afternoons to helping her with chores around the house or accompanying her on slow, gentle walks in the local park. Those moments were grounding, a reminder of what truly mattered. Recently, I wrapped up one of the most significant projects of my career so far. I can't reveal the brand, but it was an amazing opportunity to create blog posts and product descriptions for them. Once the project was complete, I politely asked the team I worked with to leave some positive reviews on my professional websites. They were more than happy to oblige. Proudly, I took screenshots of some of the best reviews and posted them on my Instagram. I knew that partnering with this brand was a major accomplishment, a significant milestone in my career. Just as I anticipated, a wave of fellow content writers reached out to congratulate me on my success, and some even shared my story, further amplifying the reach. Soon, my inbox was filled with messages from strangers seeking my help with their websites, their businesses, their dreams. Even my relatives took notice, and some of them reached out to congratulate me on my newfound success. Then, out of the blue, I received an email from my college principal. He had seen my recent achievements and wanted to invite me back to give a seminar to the current students to talk about building a career in content writing. I felt a wave of nervousness wash over me. Public speaking has always been a challenge, a personal fear to overcome. But I knew I couldn't pass up this opportunity. I took a deep breath, pushed past my anxieties, and agreed. Standing before those eager, expectant faces, sharing my experiences and insights, felt like a full-circle moment. In my speech, I spoke openly about the struggles I had faced, the obstacles I had overcome, and the sheer hard work it took to sustain myself, to build the life I wanted. It was incredibly fulfilling to empower those students to contribute, even in a small way, to the growth of the writing community. Clips of my speech began circulating on Facebook groups, resonating with many people. It felt good, truly good, to finally be recognized for my dedication, my perseverance, and my work. Just last week, I received an invitation to appear on a local news channel. The segment focused on the benefits of content writing, and they asked me to share my story and insights with their viewers. It was an incredible opportunity to share the possibilities of this field with a wider audience. I was eager to share what I've learned and inspire others to pursue their passions. The opportunity felt like a tight knot of nerves and excitement in my stomach. Being invited on the show felt like validation, a spotlight on the work I poured my heart into. I remember talking about how client feedback shaped my path and the unexpected power of a simple thank you, how it could swing open doors I hadn't even known existed. Reaching a wider audience, potentially inspiring others in my field, felt both important and a little overwhelming. When the episode finally aired, I shared a few clips on Instagram. I felt a surge of pride watching myself on screen. It was through that post that my extended family started to get a glimpse of my professional life. It was strange, really, how little my parents had shared about me. They hadn't mentioned my collaborations with well-known brands or the TV invitation. Suddenly, it seemed the news rippled through the family grapevine. I suppose the interview must have eventually reached my parents, too. A few days later, absorbed in a new project, my phone buzzed silently. I checked it later to find 6 missed calls from my mom. My heart skipped a beat. It had been years since I'd seen her name on my screen. Why now, after all this time? Hesitantly, I called back. She answered immediately, almost breathlessly. I asked if everything was all right, and then came the congratulations. Before I could even process it, my dad's voice cut in. I could practically picture him sitting right next to her. He started asking about my life, my well-being. I answered mechanically, surprised but not yet suspicious. Then came the question. How much was I earning these days? I bristled. That's none of your business, I replied, a defensive edge creeping into my voice. We're family, my dad countered. You shouldn't feel shy about sharing that with us. I simply stated that I was doing well. And then, the shift. My mom started talking about their hardships in retirement. My eyebrows furrowed. This is how the conversation pretty much unfolded. Mom, we're retired now and we've been wanting to renovate the house for ages. It's really showing its age, but we just don't have any savings left. Mom, your success has given us some hope. We saw you on TV, and we thought maybe you could help us out by paying for the renovations. Dad, after all, we're family. You shouldn't hesitate to share some of your earnings. We could really use your help. Me, are you serious? You're asking me for money after all these years of silence? I don't know what prompted this sudden interest, and while I appreciate the congratulations, I'm not going to give you any money. My mom's tone hardened. She started accusing me of being an ungrateful expletive, insisting that I had a familial obligation to support them. My dad chimed in, arguing that as my parents, they deserved to be taken care of and that this was the least I could do. I was furious. Every neglected birthday, every dismissive comment, every silent year resurfaced. I wanted to lash out, to unleash years of pent-up resentment. But then, A different idea flickered in my mind, not just to argue, but to teach them a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. The thought of them believing they could simply waltz back into my life after all this time and expect me to fund their lifestyle was infuriating. They were about to learn that the past wasn't something you could simply erase and then expect a handout. The phone call felt like a chore I couldn't avoid any longer. When I finally answered, I laid it out for them, simple and direct. I was willing to consider helping if they were willing to meet my condition. Dad, ever the pragmatist, asked what that condition entailed. Without sugarcoating it, I told them, if they wanted my assistance, they had to publicly acknowledge, in front of the extended family and our old friends, the truth about my brother. He was the one who'd started the rumors that had wrecked my reputation. My demand wasn't about financial gain, it was about justice. I wanted them to experience a fraction of the shame and humiliation they had inflicted upon me by so readily believing his lies. I needed them to own up to their actions, to understand the depth of the hurt they had caused. I could almost hear my father's discomfort through the phone as he questioned the necessity of such a public confession. My mother chimed in, suggesting a private discussion, implying that this entire thing was an overreaction. But I wouldn't budge. This wasn't negotiable. It was the baseline for any future relationship, any consideration of financial help. The tension thickened. Dad's voice rose, a familiar tactic. He invoked his authority, reminding me that I had a duty to help my family. Mom, resorting to guilt, reminded me of all the years they had invested in raising me. The irony was a punch to the gut. I reminded them that they hadn't raised me. They were the ones who had kicked me out. It was my grandmother who had been my rock, my constant. Their agitation grew, but I remained firm. If they wanted to rebuild any kind of connection with me, if they envisioned receiving financial support from me moving forward, the truth had to come out, and my brother needed to be held accountable. Since that conversation, my phone has been ringing nonstop. They keep calling, but I'm ignoring them. A cold knot of regret is forming in my stomach. Did I make a mistake even answering the phone? Would I truly be in the wrong to simply walk away, to offer no help at all? The week since I shared this has been a blur. The outpouring of support has been almost overwhelming. It's incredibly validating to know I'm not alone in this. The consensus seems to be that I shouldn't engage with them, let alone offer financial assistance, given what I've been through. The truth is, my impossible condition was set precisely because I knew they could never fulfill it. They love my brother too much. Even if they now know, deep down, that he was lying, they'll never subject him to the pain they inflicted upon me. Today, my brother sent me a text after I refused to pick up their calls again. It read, "It's been great not having you around. Mom and Dad told me about your crazy demand. They're never going to do it, you know that, right? They love me more than they ever loved you, and they'd never hurt me. So what if I lied about you 15 years ago? Get over it already. You're single and have no kids. Why can't you just help them fix up the house? Be a better daughter for once." Reading those words felt like a punch to the gut. It reminded me just how much things haven't changed. His dismissive attitude towards my struggles, the conditions I'd carefully laid out, it just screamed a lack of basic human empathy. Then, the guilt trip, hammering on the fact I was unmarried and childless, just added insult to injury. The underlying suggestion that their needs should automatically trump my own well-being, it was offensive, and it showed me exactly how little regard he held for me and my life. Frustration and a burning need for justice fueled my decision. It was time to take back the narrative, to finally expose the truth that had been buried for far too long. So I sat down, fingers poised over the keyboard, and started writing an email. It was addressed to my parents and a select group of close relatives. In it, I laid bare the painful details of my childhood, the deeply unfair treatment I'd endured growing up in that house. I described the oppressive atmosphere, the rigid rules, and the stark contrast in how they treated me versus my twin brother. I didn't hold back. The email also detailed the malicious lie my brother had concocted and spread about me at school, a rumor that had devastating consequences and permanently tarnished my reputation. I wrote about being kicked out, left to fend for myself. If it hadn't been for my grandmother's kindness, I honestly don't know where I would be. I might not even be alive today. Near the end, I asked everyone to read a message my brother had sent me, a screenshot I attached as proof. It was his confession, admitting to the lie, a clear retraction I hoped would finally shatter the falsehoods that had plagued me for so long. I sent it just an hour ago. I know a storm is coming once they read it. I'll update you on how my family reacts. Update 2. It's been a month since my last entry, and the fallout from that email has been intense, to say the least. My family absolutely exploded. Relatives who had been blissfully unaware of the extent of the favoritism and emotional abuse directed at me voiced their outrage to my parents. Many reached out to me directly, expressing their shock and apologizing for not being there for me during all of this. My brother and my parents, however, retaliated with a barrage of increasingly abusive and threatening text messages. That's when I knew I had to protect myself. I contacted a lawyer who promptly issued a cease and desist notice. It was a clear warning. Any further contact would result in serious legal repercussions. I guess the threat of legal action finally scared them straight because the messages stopped. My grandmother, bless her heart, thinks I did the right thing by finally telling the truth. She's been my rock through all of this, my unwavering support. Honestly, her opinion is the only one that truly matters to me. Knowing she has my back means everything. Update 3. 2 months have passed since my last update. I'm happy to report that things in my life are finally settling into a positive rhythm. Professionally, my content writing business is booming. The invitations to speak at seminars and on podcasts keep coming in, solidifying my position as a respected voice in my field. My relationship with my grandmother is as strong as ever. I even took a week off work recently just to spend quality time with her. She's become a passionate gardener these days, and she loves teaching me about the different flowers and herbs she grows. Those moments with her, sharing meals, having heartfelt conversations, simply being in each other's company, are the most precious and cherished memories I have. After my lawyer sent them that letter, silence. Honestly, a wave of relief washed over me. Their distance feels right. It's as if a weight has lifted. I can finally breathe a little easier, knowing they're not trying to reach me. For my part, I've finally taken the plunge and started therapy. It's daunting, facing everything head-on like this, but I also feel a sense of hope. This is for me. It's about piecing myself back together, understanding the patterns, and hopefully, learning to heal the wounds that have been festering for so long. It's a long road, I know, but I'm determined to walk it.